Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this morning's episode of Trending, brought to you in association with Iconic Coffee. Head over to shop.iconic.com, use the code TRENDING, and you get 10% off. Richard Willett joins me again this Thursday. How are you, mate? You okay?
I'm good. I just like the way you said off then. It was really powerful.
Yeah, I meant it. I really meant it.
Yeah, you
10%
did.
off. Yeah, coming around here. Right. Let's kick off with this one then. Not physically. Trump administration fast tracks controversial self-amplifying mRNA vaccine for H5N1 bird flu. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do I need to read any more? Right. The Trump administration has granted fast track written in italics, a designation to a groundbreaking and controversial, because it's lethal, self-amplifying mRNA vaccine candidate targeting the H5N1 avian influenza virus. Rinse and repeat, mate. He's not happy with Papa Warp Speed. Now I think he's going to be, Papa Bird Flu. So it's got quite a nice ring to it, actually, isn't it? Papa Bird Flu. The designation, which was announced on the 10th of April, was awarded by the US Food and Drugs Administration, the FDA, in partnership with the Department of Health and Human Services. Isn't that RFK Jr.? God, man, he's made a big change since he's come in. Unlike traditional vaccines, this candidate uses a self-replicating mRNA platform, so just like the lethal COVID jabs. Brilliant. I love it when people learn from history, meaning the genetic material continues reproducing inside the recipient's cells to boost production of flu-fighting protein and the rest. Now, I will say this is from the Gateway Pundit. For anyone that's listening to this that's still hooked on hopium, that's going, that's probably taken out of context. What is it, from The Guardian? Nope, that's from the Gateway Pundit, which, as you will know as a Trump supporter, is a massive pro-Trump outlet in the United States. And even they're calling it out by suggesting it's controversial, which of course it is. mRNA vaccines, AI, digital IDs, which of course are being introduced through Real ID and all this kind of nonsense. It's a cult goal. We know that. And to the Trump supporters that are hating me for pointing that out, you know that as well. Now, if Harris had have won, this would all be happening as well. Like, I'm not suggesting for 1 second this is only happening because Trump's in. But what I would say is, and this is in response to those that kind of don't have an argument in terms of defending Trump anymore. Some try and they just call you names, mainly. But those that really don't have an argument come back with, so you would have rather had Harris instead. No, they're both arseholes. I've been very consistent, as most of us have on this channel, with that outlook in terms of politicians. They're all parasites. They're all scumbags. Now, with Harris, the short term probably would have been worse, I would have thought. But the long term would have been exactly the same, because both Harris and Trump, sorry to burst the bubble, work for the same people, and it ain't you. Now, the difference would have been that if Harris had introduced any of these things, like this push for AI, like this push for border, biometric IDs and all that kind of stuff, and the Real ID and the mRNA vaccines, and had started bombing Yemen, you would have called it out. You would have called it out. There would have been a pushback to it. But now there isn't a pushback to it because we're winning. And I don't know how much longer, Rich, that people can keep claiming that, because every single day now there's something else. There's something else that would have been called out under Biden 3-4 years ago, and it would have been called out had Harris won, but suddenly people are silent. Hopium is hella addictive, clearly, but surely it's got to be wearing off now, mate.
Well, it's self-replicating, isn't it? That's the point. They've got it inside them, but it can't get rid of it.
That's it, mate.
That's what it is. Yeah, it's a disease. The Trump administration has gone. This is just absurd, isn't it? Now they've done everything opposite of what they said they would do. Papa Bird Flu is a great term for him. I think we should go with that one. It sounds like Sesame Street, and this is exactly what it is. It's just a kids' TV program with a bunch of puppets. It's hilarious. In a way, and it's devastating in another way. These guys are doing exactly the opposite of what they said they would do, and you're doubling down. So now mRNA self-replicating, that means when it's not needed, it can't be shut off. I think there was a term for that, which I can't quite pinpoint at the moment, of when basically it's tricked the body into producing a reaction. So usually with a normal vaccine, if I'm not wrong, and maybe I am, they'll inject you with a bit of the disease, for want of a better word, and your body will react to it, building up an immune system. It's like going to battle. The more you battle with it, the stronger you get. This is going to battle with a phantom that's not really there, tricking your body into producing this reaction, and they don't know when to shut it off. So the army ends up just eating itself alive. I believe that's probably quite a good analogy for
It is. Because
what
that's
happens.
exactly what's happened, Rich. People's immune systems are essentially attacking themselves. There's been a huge uptick in autoimmune disease and cancers and blood clots and all this sort of stuff since the last mRNA lot. And suddenly the hero is fast tracking again even more of it.
Yeah, they're basically killing themselves, which is the real awful thing about the death cult. Will trick you into killing yourself, therefore your karma will go elsewhere. Remember, there's a whole occult this a version of this and level of this. And what I would say with, if you had Harris in, is that she's not as well connected and clearly not as, I mean, this is saying something, as bright as Trump, and that is saying something. Trump is far more knowledgeable, from my understanding, of this occult stuff and plays along with it a lot more. He's been far more in tune with it, brought up around it. So maybe it would be different in that sense, that she wouldn't really understand why she was doing some things, but he clearly does. That's what's devastating about this. And RFK Jr. absolutely does. They're surrounded by these guys, these men in black. And again, how much more can you be laughed at? And it's quite sad to watch the MAGA lot and overhear the MAGA lot. It's that they're being laughed at by the people that they're following. They're taking the piss out of you, and you're carrying on supporting them. That is the essence of a death cult. The cult will get you to kill yourself in order for you to, or for the cult to achieve its greater good, and you will be self-sacrificing. Like any cult, like satanic cult, you sacrifice yourself, and that's what it's all about. And the terms, the terminology, and the theme is exactly the same here. You are injecting yourself with something that is going to eventually kill you, and we don't even know if it can be passed down the genetics to your children. So these people are truly evil, in my opinion.
The other thing, Rich, is I'll be honest, I doubt the MAGA lot, most of them, will actually take this stuff. So they'll say, well, I'm not taking mRNA stuff. I've learnt from that before, or rather I didn't take it the first time because I could see through it. So then you go, okay, that's fine. That's good for you. I'm glad for your, health. But why would you not call it out then that it's being introduced? Because if you know it's dreadful, why is your Lord and Savior rolling it out, and why are you not saying something about that? And a lot of times, Rich, when you have these conversations, they come back to you and they go, well, the deep state controls certain things. He's got to go along with certain things. Otherwise, he can't do that, or he can't do that. They've argued about that with RFK Jr. He had to promote the MMR vaccine because otherwise he couldn't have this. If you've got to go along with it, what's the point? What's the point? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm sat here saying that I think all elected politicians are frauds. Doesn't matter what side you vote for, the government gets in. Left, right, two cheeks of the same arse. I get called names for that because, no, it's different with Trump. And then in the same breath, oh, yeah, but there's only so much he can do. And if he doesn't go along with it, then he won't be able to. So my point's right then. It doesn't matter who gets in, the government wins. Right, okay. Well, I'm glad we got there in the end after however many months of abuse. But there you go. Another one, which I guess ties into this, Rich, because we spoke about this mega movement, this Make England Great Again. Tommy Robinson is I would suggest a key part in that. Whether he knows it or not is a completely different conversation. But a lot of people are looking to him in terms of a voice, and they talk about him a lot in the United States. So what's this story, Rich, you've got here today, mate?
Yeah, we've been going right. I'm going to get us on a t-shirt. Mega is a mini MAGA. It's exactly what it is over here, and it rhymes. Tommy Robinson loses court appeal challenge against prison sentence. Now, on the surface of it, there's quite a few things with this that I agree with. Now, having said that, there's a lot with Tommy comes out with which I absolutely don't agree with, especially with his stance in the Middle East and his stance on Islam and his inability to bring up things like the Zohar and the Tanya of these bad guys, and these really kind of everything he's saying about the Islamic faith is just as absurd the other side as well. So, you know, if you're going to attack these things and look at these, and yes, there's a lot in the Islamic faith that is disturbing, and there's a lot in these Orthodox Jewish faiths that are disturbing. So you can't have one without the other. So he never goes down the other, whether he's read those things or not, only he will know. So there's a lot that I don't agree with. It's clearly been put together in terms of freedom of speech, and you would agree with him to a certain degree. He's made a film, he's put the film out, he's given a different opinion. There are certain things he wasn't supposed to do. Instead of, I think it was like basically making sure that these young people weren't caused any harm. You'll know more about the film than actually I will, but we know people that have been involved with the film as well, and it's in itself, the film isn't the problem. The problem is that he's gone against his own court decisions, and he knowingly did that. So there's either sides, but whether that should have been a thing in the first place, again, you can argue that. So I have sympathy with him on this subject. Tommy Robinson has lost a court of appeal challenge against the length of his prison sentence for contempt of court. The far-right political activist, I had to put that in there, 42, was jailed for 18 months in October last year after admitting breaching the 2021 High Court order banning him from repeating false allegations against a Syrian refugee who successfully sued him for libel. Now, whether they are false or not is the whole point. In the film, he's suggesting there's another angle to this. So, you know, it's a documentary. The decision needs to be with the viewer of whether they believe it or not and believe him or not. That's an attack on free speech. I don't agree with that, and the press. And obviously we don't agree with that. But that, as you say, makes him a martyr, a MAGA martyr, or a mega martyr. And that works in his favour eventually. This is a more complex kind of situation than I would say the Israel-Palestine version is. But yeah, what's your take on it? You've actually spoke to him and done an interview with him.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up getting named in court documents actually for his, for his prison sentence. Basically, he came in here and he spoke about the documentary Silenced, in which they were basically showing that this Syrian refugee had committed these crimes, and then it had basically been flipped so that this refugee was the victim, and the media got behind it, and actually they were saying that actually this kid is not the victim, he is the aggressor, he's X, Y, and Z. There was quite a lot of accounts from people within the school and things. So it's an interesting documentary, and it comes from a point of view that I guess the establishment wouldn't like. So basically he was told that he had to take it down. He refused. And so they basically, I guess in a way, kind of tried him individually for each time it was watched. So the more times people watched it, the more, that would come back on him. They appealed against his sentence because it is very, very long. And he's obviously held in solitary confinement. 18 months on your own, that is going to be playing with your head. And so it was as I understand it, before they went into court in this appeal, it was unpinned from his Twitter account. So I don't know who's running his Twitter X account. As soon as it was found that no sentence stands, it was then repinned. Which, to be honest, if you have the facts that show that what you're saying is true, fair play. Do you know what I mean? If someone said to me that you can't say X, Y, and Z, but X, Y, and Z was true, and I had evidence that X, Y, and Z was true, then I'd still say it anyway and let the chips fall where they may. I don't have the evidence against this kid, so I'm just in a position to comment, I guess, on Tommy and what I've seen and what I've read and what I've experienced from being in his company a couple of times. We would disagree on many, many things, Israel-Palestine being a major thing. What I find interesting is before October 7th, he came in here and we had a really nice conversation, actually, and I got lots of abuse for having him on. But my point is, I'm a journalist, I guess, for want of a better term. I'll talk to everyone because that's how you get to the truth. Is the truth is in the shades of grey. It's not in the black and white. So, I will talk to, as I spoke to Nick Griffin from the BNP, former BNP, and then half an hour later, I interviewed Lembit Opik, who was a Liberal Democrat MP. And it's like, you're not going to have a go at me for talking to Lembit, but you can have a go at me for talking to Nick and talking to Tommy. But that's not how you get the truth. You talk to everyone. You get everyone's opinions out there, everyone's views out there, life experience out there, and you take a bit from that, and you take a bit from that, and you will be able to mold an opinion based on everything, as opposed to just chucking it out. Suddenly, you know, because Hitler was an artist. I hate Monet now. I don't understand that mindset. I don't. But in that interview, Rich, Tommy basically said that there's this big divide between people, and he admitted to have played a role in that. And he said that I thought in my head that the biggest problem was Islam, and now I understand that it's not, and that actually these people are being pitched against each other and us, and actually it goes way higher than that. And I was like, mate, okay, this is a cracking realization, because a lot of people follow what you say. So for you to have that realization that actually it goes way bigger than Muslims and Jews and everything else, it goes way up above that, and that incorporates in everything, and infests everything of these organizations, that is powerful. Suddenly October 7th happened, bosh, it was straight back to the old Tommy again in terms of that rhetoric. And I was like, oh, mate. Now, I don't know, because I don't have a crystal ball, whether he knows he's being made a martyr and is playing that character, and whether he knows that essentially he's being used to fuel anger, some of it righteous anger, actually. That's a question for him, but I think that's the role that he's being played. And it would not shock me, and I hope it doesn't happen, but it would not shock me if they literally martyred him. Because if something happens to Tommy in that prison, it would make Southport riots look like, you know, a walk in the park. I think it would create a real. There'd be people on the streets in every city in this country, and that in itself could kick off this civil war that you now go to prison if you suggest is on the cards. So I think it's an interesting one. It's like some of the things we were talking about yesterday. I think it's one to watch, mate.
Yeah, I agree. And Tommy's a dad. He's got children. He's a human being. He's obviously got himself way into this system, this underworld system of information and intelligence that he possibly can't get out of now. So for him to say that on the interview, and obviously I've watched that interview, is again him having a moment of, and that's brave of him to actually say that, because he knows who's watching. So, you know, things aren't that easy. No, I don't agree with 90% of what he says. 10% I do, and I understand on a human level. Sometimes people get themselves into situations like that, especially in the intelligence. Not saying that he is intelligence, but this is the whole system is intelligence. The whole thing is using people for its own greater good, as we said with a cult. So he's obviously used. We all are in a certain way. So, you know, on a human level, I have empathy with him and his children and his family. And no one knows what's going on in his head when he goes to sleep at night. So for the fact of a film giving a different opinion, you know, where it's icy, dicey ground to be walking on.
It is. Talking of human beings, this is, you know, I don't know how much longer we can talk about what's going on in Gaza, and see the apathy from certain aspects of society towards it is. It's quite unsettling, actually, especially those within what you would call the alternative realm, those that we stood side by side by on the streets to fight against the COVID tyranny and all that kind of stuff, to still be looking the other way. And in fact, not even looking the other way, but cheering it on, I find quite nauseating, actually. Evacuate everywhere. Humanitarian conditions in Gaza are now the worst they've been in the last 18 months. Now imagine that. Displacement has been our constant reality for almost 2 years, says Malik, a father of two in Khan Younis. Every day we're forced to find new ways to survive in a situation where the only thing that's become cheaper is human life. There's no place left for us to go, said Malik, a Palestinian father of two in his mid-30s, who was displaced to the Mawasi region of Khan Younis after Israel resumed its car bombing campaign in Gaza in mid-March. Now the occupation army has dropped leaflets ordering people to evacuate almost every place in Gaza. They're telling us to evacuate everywhere. There's nowhere to go, mate. That's the point. It's an open-air prison. It's been an open-air prison for decades. So when you say to someone, get out of that prison cell, I'm gonna throw a bomb in there. Okay. Well, the door's locked, mate, so I don't know what you want me to do. So now I know that my family and I will have to move again, not before long. Malik spends his time in a tent encampment where he and his family have stayed for months now. Basically, he's been displaced 7 times in the last 18 months with his family. He's got to just up and leave, go somewhere else, and then another leaflet drops, another bombing campaign starts, and they have to trek these kids. This is the thing, children. Nearly 50% of Gaza's population is under the age of 16. These are freaking kids, mate. And what makes this so tragic is actually this story was from yesterday morning. Now, since then, overnight, Khan Younis, the tent encampment in Khan Younis, where Malik and his young family are, has been bombed. And so they're saying already there's dozens dead, but the full death toll they won't know because it's bombed. And of course, you know, when tents are bombed, I mean, there's no protection anywhere. It's not like you can hide underneath a freaking snooker table in the ground in the basement or something. There is nothing. So if a tent gets bombed, there's nothing left of it, including the people inside it. So in terms of death numbers, you probably won't even know them ever. Obviously, those that support this will say, "Oh, they're all terrorists." Are they? Even the toddlers? Of course they are. It's. I'm at a point now where I feel like crying, and 2, I just feel like just throwing haymakers at certain people, which I know is not the answer because I'm not an aggressive man normally, but I feel it right now, Rich. Honestly, mate, I'm getting sick and tired of this.
Yeah, the world is getting sick and tired of it as well. So you're saying that these people in this interview here, for want of a better term, might not be with us anymore?
Absolutely might not be. If they're in a tent encampment in Khan Younis and overnight that encampment has been bombed to smithereens, then do you know what I mean? I'm not a gambling man, but I don't think it takes a gambling man to at least consider the odds are not so great.
Well, I don't know if we can do this, but if we can get an image of what's in the article up here on the screen, look at that. That's a man with a little boy and a tiny, it's a little girl or a little boy sitting there on top of nothing. So there's 3 kids, I think, there with his father, and I don't know who that is behind them. They might not be with us anymore because of this nonsense, this total nonsense, this messianic nonsense from the Bible. How long are we going to do this for? You imagine being those kids. So you think about Tommy and his children, and that's one thing we've all got in common. We want the world to be a better place for our kids. You know, it's easy to sit here and comment on it in our nice, lit studios and talk about it, and that's what we have to do. It's all we can do. But the people that can really make a difference are the ones in the military service that refuse to do this. It's all very well you dropping leaflets. The reason why you won't go on the ground and give out the leaflets because as you know you shouldn't be on the ground because it's dangerous. And it's dangerous because you're doing it and you're making it dangerous. So, the world will never forget this.
No.
And they won't. And it's no turning back from this. And that's all it plays into this narrative as well. They're martyring themselves and all of this. I mean, how do we get here? How do we get here?
You can't defend it. That's the thing. You can't defend the indefensible, which is why, to go back to the savior Trump, that's why they're pushing all this anti-Semitism legislation through, this attack on free speech, which if Harris was doing, again, you'd be kicking off about it. It's because they know that they can't defend what's going on, and they know that the world in massive numbers now is turning against Israel, so they need to shut you up. And I would suggest, and we've spoken about this before, Rich, that they're also trying to shut you up in advance for what they're planning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Semitic means a group of languages, largely Arabic. It doesn't mean what you think it means. That means the Palestinians. So they're even laughing at you by stealing the terminology and sticking anti at the front. If I use antiperspirant, it doesn't change the meaning of perspirant. Semitic means what it means. And we need to start drawing lines in the sand and going, that's not what it means. I don't care what lunacy you come up with or how you try and twist it or change it, because that's their MO. That's what they always do, is they take something and twist it. That's not what it means. It applies to the Palestinians, and it always will. And we have to refuse to go along with this nonsense in terms of just you do need to get to the point where you go, whatever you say, I am not listening. I'm not going along with it. 2 + 2 is not 5, and it never will be. Scream all you like. And don't try and placate them, because these are lunatics. This is, again, like a cult leader. They want what they want. They'll lie, twist, and use everything. It's not the people of Israel. Obviously, they're going to be used. A small percentage are supposed to survive this. They're cannon fodder as well. The quicker the people wake up, the less people die of this. And that's including everywhere over here as well. This affects our situation massively because they see us, this cult sees us as Rome, the Edomites, West, and we're supposed to fall in their little narrative. So people better start waking up. These mega lot over here and the mega lot over there, again, like a death cult does, signing their own death warrant.
Yeah, I saw an article actually when I was reading the one from the Gateway Pundit about the mRNA, which was suggesting that Netanyahu was fighting the deep state in Israel. I nearly fell off my chair, mate. Right, let's end on something positive though. And it's interesting because we're leading into this story by you saying that 2 and 2 doesn't equal 5, and it would seem that the Supreme Court in the UK actually agrees with that for once.
Yeah, well, we were going into a world where 2 and 2 equals orange, weren't we? What does the UK Supreme Court really mean for transgender women? Now, maybe you can clear this up for me, because even the explanation of this is slightly confusing. Decisions of definition of woman follows a series of legal challenges brought by a campaign group backed by Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling. How do we get to this point? The UK Supreme Court handed down a judgment on Wednesday which has found that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act refer to a biological woman and biological sex. With the potential long-lasting ramifications on how Britain treats its equalities policy, the dispute centres on whether or not somebody with a gender recognition certificate, how'd you get one of them? You've got like a driving licence, recognising their gender as female should be treated as a woman under the 2010 Equality Act. So all I can get from that is basically just because you call yourself a woman, you're not going to be allowable to use facilities that are put aside for women or take a job that's specifically created for a woman, even if you've had the gender reassignment surgery because you're not an actual woman. That's what I glean from it. But is it more complicated than that?
Not really. I find it mad that we're sat here in 2025 and we need a Supreme Court ruling to decide what a woman is. I mean, if you got a time machine and you went back 100 years and explained that to someone, they'd put you in a padded cell. Like, what the frick?
I find it funny that two 40-year-old men are actually confused by what it actually means. The clearing up of it is confused just as much as the actual 2 + 2 = orange.
Well, we're probably meant to be confused. The whole thing's nonsense. At the end of the day, there's this argument that biological sex isn't real. Okay, in what world is that a thing? Like, women should have women-only spaces. Biological women, should be in the women's football team. That the fact that this even needs a court ruling is madness to me. Like, I don't understand it. And when the court ruled the way it did, suddenly all these pronouns in bios and multiple flags in bios, most of them for the Labour Party as MPs, took to social media to just go mad about it, about how this is a disgraceful attack on transgender women. It's like, how is it? If I can say like, oh, hi, yeah, no, I'm a woman now. I mean, some people believe that anyway, but I'm a woman now. Can I have a certificate? Yeah, where do I get that? Online, 15 quid, bargain. I'll give you 20, keep the change. Right, I've got a certificate now. So now I can walk into a female bathroom. I can walk into a female changing room and shower facility. I can walk into a shelter for abused women and stay overnight. I can walk into the female football team. Squad hat trick. God, you big woman. That is madness. Yet a Supreme Court ruling saying, well, actually, no, not really. That's sort of not how it works, and it's also not fair in any way whatsoever. Has people outraged. That to me is like, everything's backward, man. Like, we've seen it and what they do is there'll be the odd example and then they'll say, oh no, that's an extreme example. It's not going to happen. So you take like female sports, for instance. You had the situation with Leah Thomas, who's a 7-foot woman who won a swim competition and therefore took that title away from a biological woman, when actually Leah Thomas, when a man previously, wasn't finishing in the top anything. Like, where did they finish? I don't know, over there somewhere, miles away. so suddenly then becomes a champion. You had, even in the Olympics, you had two so-called women fighting in the final when it seemed, at least, that their biological makeup was that of a male. Imagine my shock. Imagine the fact that two biological males finished up in the final of the female boxing. I couldn't have seen that one coming. But it started off as, oh no, that's just such a rare. It's everywhere now. On a daily basis, women are finishing second, third to biological men. Girls' dreams that they've worked so hard for shattered by someone that actually, as an athlete, is completely unremarkable. Completely unremarkable. They just have a physical advantage that's not brought about by training hard and working hard and being mentally strong. It's brought about by the fact they were born with a cock and balls and everything that goes with that. And that's wrong. But suddenly, if you believe social media and you believe Labour Party MPs and you believe Stonewall, which is a very sinister organisation in my view, if they're against something, I'm for it. I've got to that point now with Stonewall. The fact that those people are so outraged by it just shows how far we've fallen as a society.
Well, as a planet, basically,
Yeah.
as a planet. But there is a deeper meaning for us and deeper reason for all this. And this is because, and there always is, it all goes back to the occult. Their gods of this global cult are non-gender. They're androgynous gods. So they're trying to get the world used to being androgynous. So, as you say, Brave New World, children will be born in hatcheries. This is genuine. This is how this cult. Remember, it's a cult. So you haven't got to see, you're going, well, that's mad. Yes, it's a cult. Of course it's mad. They actually believe that their gods were androgynous. So the Yahweh had a female counterpart, which was Shekinah. So you had male and female all in one. Adam and Eve came from the same person. That was the whole point. So they want to go back to being gods. They see themselves as returning the world back to the Iron Soft, which is their godhead, to the one. It's the whole circle of life, Elton John. And it's the fact that that is part of it. So great song. Yeah. But it's the fact that that's what it is. So underneath it all, they're all being used for this agenda they just never have heard about, which is the transgender agenda is all part of this androgynous no gender agenda where children will be born in hatcheries and they will be like the gods, which is this transhuman no gender being. That's exactly where it's heading. And as absurd as that sounds, the people at the very top absolutely believe this. I mean, JD Vance wears guyliner. That's for a start. It's definitely going that way. So unfortunately, there's a much deeper reason for all of these things. And this transgender, transhuman situation is all about becoming like the gods.
Yeah. And I think this is something we have to sort of almost explain fairly regularly, I guess. And I know you do, Rich. You always make it clear the fact that, because we're talking about this agenda and people are going, oh, that's mad. Well, we know it's mad. We know it's mad. These people are mad. They're insane. And like all cults are, they're insane. And I think with how you've spoken about it before, Rich, where if you're going to walk forward, you need the right foot and the left foot. And so the agenda will go through in a certain way with your so-called left-leaning parties. And then there's a bit of resistance to that. Oh, they've lost that election. Well, here comes the right foot. And despite what it says in the campaign, it takes you ever so slightly forward. And then suddenly there's some resistance again of, oh, no. And then so all you're doing is you're just electing left and right each time, which is why politics is a nonsense anyway. And each time it still marches on and marches on, which is why nothing changes, no matter whose name is above the door.
Well, like a Trojan horse, for want of a better term, it's a Trojan horse. Politics is a Trojan horse towards the New World Order. That's just all it is.
Yeah, and there's a Trojan horse in the White House, that's for sure. Rich, thanks so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed seeing your face again. I keep saying that every day. I was watching back on training yesterday and how much I was saying I was looking forward to seeing your face. And I liked that because I thought that's kind of like, that's a nice thing to hear, isn't it? When you're all the way over there in Norwich with webbed feet people and stuff. I'm seeing you in the actual flesh tomorrow at the Iconic Live in Sutton Coldfield, which is just outside Birmingham. You can get tickets for that still, I believe, at shop.iconic.com. Hopefully it'll be a bit of a crack. All of us will be there talking on stage, and we'll be showing some videos, some exclusive content and some stuff that we've been making, and hopefully just have some fun, because even though we talk about all this miserable stuff and the way the world is and all these negative things, we can make it better. That's the point, fundamentally, because we all want it to be better. I think it doesn't really matter what religion you are, what race you are, whatever. At the end of the day, everyone just wants to get on. They want to get by. They want a roof on their head. They want food in the belly, and they want to have a laugh, and they don't want to have to deal with this nonsense constantly. So if we can meet on that level, Rich, and go, do you know what, all this rubbish we're arguing about, just put that aside, mate. Our enemy is not each other. Our enemy is coming from above, both literally and metaphorically, potentially. And actually, we can defeat this if we're all together, But yeah, there should be a good night, hopefully, and I'm looking forward to seeing you, Rich. So that's us.
Be a bit of a crack. As you said, it'd be a bit of a crack. And thinking about, speaking of being a bit of a crack, I've got something about Elon Musk that I want to go into as well. So I'll be really looking forward to doing that.
Okay. I mean, my mind's going wherever that crack is, but I'll look forward to that then. But everyone at home, thank you so much for tuning in. It's brought to you in association with Iconic Coffee. Head over to shop.iconic.com. Use the code TRENDING. You get 10% off. And that will hopefully, any profits made will come back so that Rich can sit on a stage in Sutton Coldfield and talk about Elon Musk's crack, which is, do you know what I mean? What more do you want? Take it easy, mate.
Yeah.